Hey everyone, this is Paul Glaze with Georgia Conservation Voters Education Fund. We are going to get started soon. I'm letting people in slowly but surely. Please bear with us just for a few minutes. I'm also going to send out some thank yous for being here as we get going, especially to folks like the wonderful Amina Robinson, AJ Lynch, Alana Sanders. Thank you for being here. We are joined tonight. We're going to be joined tonight, and you can see here from Councilwoman Valencia Smith from Conyers. We will hear from them later. Alexander Johnson, thank you for being here. Alex Boy, Angela Everett, appreciate you. Same Ashanti Dixon. Cloris Jackson and Dee McCall, appreciate y'all making some time tonight, as well as Georgette and Georgina Harris, but Georgette Harris Fisher and Denise Williams. Always great for y'all to be here. Juanita Carson and Latasha Emery, thank you. John Gibbons, Maya Allen, appreciate you as well. We have a couple more panelists there. As they join, I'm going to go ahead and promote them to panelists. We'll get started, like I said, here in just a few minutes. Get a share. Mhm. We go ahead and present this for now. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Appreciate you very much. See, Russell McWilliams, thank you. Teresa, thank you. Let me enable that. No, Alana, that is not meant to be disabled. I'll get on that right now. Appreciate you being here and thank you for bringing that up. We can get into our settings here. We upgraded it shortly before this in order to make sure that it was not going to kick anybody out, that we wouldn't hit capacity. So I'm going to make sure that we get that covered right now. Oh, there we go. Yeah, no, for tonight, those will need to be in the Q&A, Alana, and in the future, these will be meetings. But just based on the number of people we had last time, we went ahead and made this one a webinar to make sure that we could get everybody in here. And I will play around with that and make that better. You thought I'm going to make you a panelist right now. Thank you so much for being here again. Jenna, thank you so much. Let's see. Matt Scott, thank you for being here today. Max Brown, Maya Allen, Michelle Dawkins, we appreciate you as well. Joined by my illustrious executive director, Briante McCorkle. Appreciate that. Tim Pratt with The Guardian, thank you. Salik Sohani, thank you so much for being here. We're going to get started in just a couple of more minutes. We are about halfway here right now. And of course, so for tonight, if you have a question, please put them in the Q&A. I will be monitoring that this entire time. And I promise that we will get to everybody's questions here. I know the Zoom says it's going to be open for 2 hours. We're only going to need an hour of your time. It's not going to be that long. We're going to move tonight, though, from just information to this is what we've heard. This is the demands that have been made. Do we agree with these things? And how do we move forward as a group to get this done? I'm also going to start dropping some links here in the chat for everyone. This first one is the website that was just made following our press conference on Saturday. You can see a list of demands. You can see upcoming events, partners that have signed on to the coalition already, and a number of other things there on that website. Appreciate everybody being here again. We're going to give it about 4 more minutes. Denoria Evans, thank you so much for being here. Eugene Cook, appreciate you as well. Hayden Singleton and Mark Weissman, appreciate you. Let's see here. We got a Nicole Castillo and a Portia Miller. I know it's a Monday and we're all ready to get home, so I promise we're going to respect your time. But Zesta Debro and Yelena Meresheva and Valerie Brown Debro, thank you so much for joining us as well. Waiting on one more panelist, and we can go ahead and get started here in about 2 minutes. Let's see here. The next thing I'm going to drop here in this chat, and we'll come back to this later, is an action checklist. This is a very easy step-by-step. Here are things you can do. This is going to cover just your basics. That's if you have any symptoms, write them down, journal them. If you have neighbors, check on them. If you got family, check on them. If they have symptoms, write those down. Things like that. And we will, get to action stuff later, but just want to make sure we make this as easy as possible there. Dan Friedman, wonderful for you to join us tonight. We got 2 more minutes. Jenna Parody and Jennifer Simmons, lovely, kind of sort of e-meeting you, as well as Natalie Viasana and Natalia Stevenson and Nedra Deadweiler. Also want to, if when the time comes, I see that Ms. Stroud has joined us. So if you would like to make them a panelist and for them to have time too, that is absolutely wonderful. We'd love to make that happen. Nikki Merritt, as always, appreciate your time, and Ursula Davis as well. Got just 1 more minute, and then we're going to go ahead and get started. Also, I'm going to drop here in the chat. Let me make sure I do the right link here. But we've made a dedicated email for just this coalition as we keep going, and it is lets, LETS, at shutdownbiolab.com. Okay, and I'm going to do one last participant invitation here. Let's write down. Someone needed me to text them the link. I'm doing the computer to phone hustle. There we go. Matt Scott, you are now famous. Your name was said live on a Zoom call. And I hope that for everyone who does not know, Matt Scott's joining us from Atlanta Community Press Collective, where they have spent the entire day covering the shenanigans at Atlanta City Hall with the Office of the Inspector General. And as you might imagine, it's a full-time job. All right, I'm going to promote one more person here to a panelist. That is our friend Daniel Blackman. And at 6:35, we are now going to go ahead and get ready and get going. We have 2 questions coming in. We'll get to those here in a second. So, hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us again tonight. Unlike last week, we're going to try and keep the updates and informational stuff to the front of this, and we're going to get directly into here's some courses of action we can take. To start that off, I'm going to pass it over to someone that I'm very proud to work for, our Executive Director of Georgia Conservation Voters Education Fund, that is Briante McCorkle. and they're going to ground us and get us going here. And absolutely, Charlene, I promise you there will be a recording, and I will make sure that you get it afterwards. So first off, here is Briante.
Hey, everybody. It's exciting to be here with you all, not because of the circumstances. Obviously, these are less than ideal circumstances, but it's good to see people coming together, trying to get the right information, figuring out, how they can take action for themselves and their family. And so I want to make sure that I am providing everybody with some baseline information about what happened before we get into the organizing portion of the call. When all of this, when I got the news about biolabs and was trying to navigate for myself and my family, what we needed to do, there was just a lot of confusion about what went wrong and who was responsible and who should have been watching our backs. And so I want to give just some baseline information here. I know that we have Daniel Blackman from the EPA joining us. We also have a local representative from the area as well joining us to give more context. And so I'm just going to start with a few slides to just bring us all up to speed because this was helpful for me. Hopefully it's helpful for you all. So just to be really clear, BioLab based in Conyers, it's a chemical manufacturing company. They produce household products, but it's primarily for pool and spa treatments, such as the chlorine-based chemicals. The company is owned by KIK Consumer Products, which is a multinational company that deals in chemical products. As we know, this is not the first fire at the BioLab's Conyers facility. This facility has had multiple fires back in 2004, which resulted in, a large-scale environmental disaster. There was water runoff from the fire suppression efforts that contaminated the nearby lake, led to significant fish kill, threatening our water. The Georgia EPD investigated and also worked with BioLab on cleanup and restoration of that fire. Then in 2020, there was another fire. And after this fire, the U.S. Chemical Safety and Hazard Investigation Board identified several issues at the plant, including insufficient preparedness for extreme weather, delays in responding to emergency. They also flagged the lack of automatic extinguishing systems and noted that chlorine is not adequately regulated under the EPA's risk management program. And of course, now we are here in September 2024 with our most recent fire that broke out in the facility. It originated on the roof, and then after the initial extinguishment, the sprinkler system the sprinkler system malfunction caused water to mix with chemicals on site. And so the situation is ongoing as residual chemical reactions continue to produce gases, and that's where we are today. I want to add some context on who oversees BioLabs. So at the federal level, BioLabs does fall under the regulatory purview of the Clean Air Act, which provides protection from emissions of hazardous air pollutants. The enforcement of these regulations tends to be pretty weak because of a lack of resources at the federal and state levels, but the EPA has been monitoring air quality, both in the 2020 situation and the 2024 situation. As we reported last week on our call, the chlorine levels, which is the primary pollutant that was identified, they were below the hazardous threshold. And so just want to make sure that everybody is aware of that. The agency is continuing to monitor, and there was some, pushback because the initial reports were coming from BioLab and their vendors. The EPA has since conducted independent ground and aerial monitoring, which we heard some about on our last call. So we're still pretty clear that the chlorine levels are below hazardous levels, but there's still lots of questions from other chemicals and what the impacts are of what's already in the air. And I also wanted to note that in my research, I found out that OSHA has also fined BioLab. So that's the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. They fined the company for safety violations on multiple occasions. In 2019, the company was fined $6,000 for failing to provide proper hazardous chemical training. And their records show repeated violations, including with worker safety. And so at the state level, we see the Georgia EPD is involved. Sorry for the typo, we'll fix that. But the BioLab, there have been multiple inspectors that have found multiple safety hazards, including improperly sealed hazardous waste containers and poor facility maintenance. The EPD also cited BioLab in 2004 for issues with the runoff management. And then also at the state level, there was a legislative attempt made to pass what we called the Bad Actor Bill. And that would have prevented companies with repeated environmental violations from receiving permits. The bill did not pass, and that's unfortunate. Our state legislators did not feel like it was important to create a mechanism to hold companies like this accountable for repeated violations. And so they continue to operate despite their record. Oops, did not mean to click on that link. Okay, so at the local level, we saw that that's where the emergency notifications went out. Approximately 17,000 residents were evacuated. Many of you were impacted. Your family and friends were impacted. As of today, officials said that except for the 2-mile zone around the BioLab facility, residents will no longer be required to shelter in place. And so I do know there are Rockdale County and other local communities that are feeling the pressure, but also wanting to put the pressure on the company as well, and are trying to engage with BioLab regarding its safety, mitigation, and security plans. We'll hear a little bit more about that today. And so that leads us here to this meeting. We've heard a lot of demands from people over the past week, things like shutting down BioLab, getting health screenings for all area residents. There are obviously a lot of workers and residents in the area who are affected by the chemical fire. Are they being compensated? Are they being supported? We want a comprehensive evacuation plan in place and stipends to cover expenses, because unfortunately, this might not be the last time this happens, especially if this plant is allowed to continue to operate. There have been calls to declare a state of emergency, to organize a large-scale cleanup initiative as well, with regular reports about what's going on. There's still a lot of confusion about if the air is safe and what the cleanup looks like from here. And of course, there are some calls to prosecute the KIK consumer products executives who are responsible for this disaster. So I thought that was really helpful for me in understanding, how we got here, what the different agencies are that are involved, where a ball should have been held but was dropped. And yes, this will be made available for you all. I know that was a lot of words on slides, but you can go back and rewatch this and pause and read everything. And I also put the sources in there as well, so you can feel confident that you know where that information came from. And so that's all I wanted to provide up front. I do want to say that I've been doing climate and environmental justice work for a really long time. I've talked to and learned with some folks who've been pioneers in the environmental justice space. And it's just really important that we're doing what we're doing right now, which is coming together as a community, sharing information, but also taking action. Environmental injustice happens when these things just keep these plants keep operating, they keep polluting our air and water. They get placed into our communities without our input, without our involvement. And we have got to, as a community, come together and take all the pathways of action to preventing these things from happening in the future. Shutting down biolabs is one path that most people are very excited about, but there will be more biolabs. I'm just going to say that there will be more biolabs. There have been smaller incidences in other parts of the state that haven't received as much media coverage because it's not the Metro Atlanta area. I hear multiple times every year about air pollution releases, water pollution releases, and it all comes back down to EPA, the Georgia Environmental Protection Division, and their regulation of these plants and facilities. And when the community is not involved, there is not enough pressure to really hold these companies accountable. And so I hope we get there with this incident today. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over. I believe the next person in the lineup is our dear friend and esteemed leader, Daniel Blackman.
Actually, before we jump in over with Daniel, I want to stop and hit a question we've got here, which is from Tisa Washington. And I'm going to read it out loud so everyone gets it, which is that asking so I can get it in the queue. Yesterday morning, I drove through the plume, but there was no smell. Is that something I should document or be concerned about? Is it possible that something's being added to kill the smell? What people need to be concerned about right now documenting is any symptoms, any physical symptoms that you get. Chlorine is the kind of thing that if you can smell it, then it's impacting you. If you can't smell it, then it's not. There may be other things. That's not to say that, that's not, I'm not a atmospheric scientist, although we had one on last week and I will follow up with her. But what I would do right now is just be very conscious of your own physical symptoms and those of your family and loved ones. And then document those if you have them. Highly unlikely that they are adding anything to kill the smell. All indications are they're having a hard enough problem dealing with what they've got. I wouldn't be nothing, let me put it this way. Nothing suggests that they have been proactive in this process. So I wouldn't go there yet. And before we go to Daniel, I'd like to invite our Conyers Councilwoman Valencia Smith to come on screen and give us an update from City of Conyers and what she's heard on the ground. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A and I will make sure that she gets them. Thank you.
Well, it looks like I'm having a little issue with the video. It's saying the host has prevented, says you cannot start your video because the host has stopped it.
Let me get right on that. That should not be the case, but I will get you here in 1 second.
Do you want to try to get started just with audio while we
Yeah.
wait?
Not a problem. So thank you everybody for joining into this Zoom call this evening. I am Councilwoman Valencia Smith with the City of Conyers. I have been on the council, this is my 5th year, 2nd term, and I live in the heart of Old Town. So I am a part of the 17,305 people in the evacuation area. Also now that 2-mile radius of shelter in place. So I understand your concerns. It is definitely something that has come to everyone in the city at City Hall's attention, and we are definitely not letting this go away anytime soon. So as far as city updates go, we've kind of partnered with the county in making sure that we're kept abreast of what's going on the site on a daily basis. As of today, there's been really no change. They've kind of cut out the 24-hour working to protect the crew. Operation continues. They delay in the morning to allow the weather to warm up and keep the plume from staying on the ground. They also plan to work all day to make sure that they keep the plumes from spreading to the ground level. Wind is constantly moving, which is why people are seeing the plume shift from one side of I-20 to the other. We've also been told the EPA is continuing to monitor the air quality and they're posting reports with no detection. But just to make sure that we're doing our due diligence in the city, we've brought in Georgia Tech to do an independent air quality test. They are centrally located at City Hall, and they're there all day, making sure that they're checking our air quality in the radius around City Hall in Old Town to make sure that the air quality in the heart of Old Town and those connecting veins to the city are in acceptable ranges, and we've been told that they are. So as far as shelters, if you feel the need to shelter right now, they have JP Carr on standby if any sheltering needs to occur. They've closed the one that they had in Henry County, and they just say to remain vigilant in making sure that if you see the plume come your way, to shelter in place until it passes you by. Again, be conscious of the smell. If you smell it, please make sure that you trust yourself. That's what I've been telling a lot of my constituents. Trust yourself, because your health is more important to us and your safety is more important to us than anything else right now. So you want to make sure that, as everybody has stated previously, you keep a record of those symptoms that you may be experiencing. Or if you have the plume that comes into your area, I've also been telling constituents to keep a record of that as well. for future reference. You never know when you may need to fall back on that reference that you've been collecting all this time. So we've been monitoring on a day-to-day basis. I know that I've been in concert conversation with county commissioners, state representatives, federal representatives, trying to make sure that we stay on top of this. And again, like I stated, this is very unfortunate. And we're going to make sure that we do our due diligence as far as the city goes to hold BioLab accountable for our residents. So if you guys have any questions, you can always feel free to contact me via my email that's posted on City of Conyers website, or I'm on all social media, Councilwoman Valencia Smith.
Councilwoman, thank you so much. And you should be good to come on video now. I do have a couple of questions here in the Q&A that I'd pose to you, if that's okay. Okay, so the first is from Barbara Thompson. Barbara says that information has been scarce and seems dated. What can we do to lobby for mandatory hourly updates during a catastrophe like this, maybe in the future? I mean,
So
as well. Yeah.
that's something that we've been working on, because that is a big concern for us to have real-time updates as it's occurring and not have to be delayed hours, if you will, or sometimes days, if you will, of not getting a current update. So we have been in heavy conversation with the chairman as well as the county commissioners to ensure that we are getting the latest updates as it's happening. And in the future, we're creating some avenues, especially with our City of Conyers app, because we do have an app that we've launched a few months ago that we're trying to get our citizens enrolled in, so that when we do have situations like this occur, that we can make sure that we send the alerts out ourselves instead of having to necessarily wait on the county to do so.
Thank you so much. And this next one is from Ashanti Dixon. And part of it is, I think a county thing, but the question is, how can we know the air quality of Conyers? And, what do you know about why they lifted the shelter in place? And for context, they said uh, uh, as a public school employee for the county, my school smelled like chemicals and the HVAC system was on. Will the schools be safe to return Thursday? And do we know if the school filters will be replaced?
So I too am an educator. I actually work at Rockdale County High School. So that is literally in walking distance from my home. And that's a big concern for me as well. To my knowledge, the school system is going to continue to delay as long as they don't, as long as they feel as though it's not safe for staff and students to return to the building, and not even just the building, but being outside, because a lot of kids got to stand outside and wait for the bus, or they have to walk to school. So because we are centrally located within that 2-mile radius right now, quite a few schools fall within those limits. And so until we are all safe as a whole, those conversations that I've had with school board members, still waiting on a response back from Dr. Oates, they're going to continue to try to delay until everybody in the school district can come back and there's a level of safety for all. And as far as the air quality, I'm no scientist, but again, I always tell my constituents, especially lately, trust your instincts and yourself. I've come outside in the mornings and I've smelt the chlorine and go, oh, nope, not today. And I go back inside the house until it warms up, and I'll keep testing to see if I still smell it or still see it before I leave my home. So we can only go by what the scientists and the data is providing for us as far as safe air quality goes. But if you feel symptomatic, whatever those symptoms are, you smell it, you see it, I always would recommend that you trust yourself, your instincts first, and you try to handle that accordingly, which the recommendation has been to shelter in place until you don't smell it or it passed you by.
Thank you so much. I think we have just two more here that I can pull out, and the rest I think we'll be able to get later on.
Okay.
The first is what are some policies? This is from Kay Wallace. And to Ms. Wallace, I am not going to embarrass myself by mispronouncing your first name, so I apologize. What are some policy changes that you as an elected official think should be enforced to prevent further instances like this from occurring? What would you like to see happen around BioLab?
First and foremost, I would like to see where the city, because although this is a county, commercial resident, if you will, it's impacting the city. I would like for us to have a better seat. I'm not gonna say that we don't have a seat, but a better seat at the table when these companies try to come into our areas. Although it may be a county commercial resident, if you will, if it is going to, in some capacity, be a relative, not relative, a neighbor, there's a better word, to the city, then we should have some type of input or say into what, those guidelines are for that company coming in. Um, Going forward, I can tell you that it's going to be very challenging for a company like BioLab to either continue having a footprint here in Conyers, or any company coming after to potentially obtain a footprint in Conyers, because now we've had 3 incidents that is leaving quite a taste in our mouths, no pun intended. But going forward, I would like to see us have a stronger relationship, not with just the county, because we do well with the county, but also with our state representatives, our federal representatives. OSHA, quite frankly, was doing their job, but there's a lot of things that aren't regulated by OSHA. So I feel as though we may need to take a look at those regulations and figure out, hey, what is dated? And what can we bring up to date to where these things that are being missed can clearly not be missed anymore and be properly regulated, so that we don't have incidents like this occur anymore.
Hey, Paul, can I interject there as well?
Yes, 1 second. Let me remove this pin and go ahead, Daniel.
Yeah, no, I want to co-sign what the councilwoman said, but I also want to just let people know one of the most critical things we can do, and I don't want to politicize the conversation, but we can't just elect people and expect every 2 years or 4 years to hear from them again. City council meetings are critical. County commission meetings are critical. School board meetings are critical. As the councilwoman just mentioned, going into a school with the question that was asked earlier, we need to be very intentional about what we want to see from our school board members to make sure that the indoor air quality is where it needs to be. For example, we should let all of our school board members know that within the EPA, where I'm the former regional administrator, we had a program within our air division. So you have directors of various respective areas. You have a water director, an air director, Superfund director, so on and so forth. They can actually come into your schools and test the air quality. So we need to make sure that we understand. And I'll go into it when my comments are made, but I really think we need to make sure we do that. But then lastly, I think one thing that can happen, it was mentioned earlier by Briante and by the councilwoman about bad actor legislation. We need to push for our state representatives to look into bad actor legislation so that we prevent other counties and communities from having to bear the same type of burden. But also, I believe that counties like Rockdale and Gwinnett and DeKalb, any county, we need to have citizen review boards. A lot of times people are familiar with citizen review boards after, for example, a police shooting. But we need to have a review board in place to help monitor the public health and well-being and safety of the communities that are in these areas. And this is something that the councilwoman and so many other people can be a resource for. So I think making sure that communities continuously have their voice at the table will be critical. So Paul, I want to respect the time and just pause right there.
Okay, and there's one, Councilwoman, we appreciate your time so much here.
No problem.
There is one more that I think is directly in your wheelhouse, and I want to keep us moving. Y'all, some of these questions are questions that we could give you an answer on, but I want to make sure we get an expert or someone that is qualified to do it. And that is no shade to anyone as a panelist on here. Some of this is very, very technical scientific stuff. So someone said that at today's news conference, it was said that the 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. shelter in place for those within the 2-mile radius is still there. There are scheduled county and school board meetings or school meetings at 6 p.m. within the 2-mile radius. And so the question is, are we going to follow up on that, or, are those going to be rescheduled? How should people approach those?
So I've seen the emails that have gone out. I've been in heavy email mode all day today. And most of the emails have stated that any activities regarding the school or any of the school board meetings, or even I believe there was like a what is it called? Like a town hall meeting um with Dr. Oates. All of those have been delayed until further notice because they want to ensure that everybody is safe first. So they have, to my knowledge, delayed those meetings until future notice.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Councilwoman. I'm going to keep us moving over here to our next person, but we really appreciate you taking some time with us tonight.
No problem. Thank
Um,
you, guys.
And everyone listening, if you have further questions for the Councilwoman, please drop in the Q&A and I will take note of them and make sure we get them over. Next, we're going to turn back over here to Daniel Blackman. Daniel is the former regional administrator for the EPA for the Southeast. And that's for the 7 or 8 states down here in the Southeast. And he has been on the ground and liaisoning also with Congressman Hank Johnson's office and with a lot of the actors involved. So I'm going to turn it over to Daniel for updates, on the state to federal level.
I want to thank Paul. I want to thank Briante, Georgia Conservation Voters, and Councilwoman, and the panelists that we'll have. So I'll start back off really by very, very briefly reminding everyone of the actors that are in this. You have EPD, which is jurisdiction. It's under the state of Georgia. So EPD is how we have the Environmental Protection Agency to the federal side. For those that don't know, EPD is regulated by the governor's office in the state of Georgia, and there is an on-site coordinator that manages what is considered incident command, where is the multitude of organizations that are involved there. Those organizations, for those of you that were not on last week, include Environmental Protection Division, Environmental Protection Agency, Georgia Emergency Management, so GEMA. You have the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Public Health, Rockdale Emergency Management, and I think that I have all of them. So if I missed one, please forgive me, but I'll make sure that we continuously remind you all of that. As of last week, a lot has not changed. I will tell you that from my former federal service, we're in investigative mode. So I can tell you that right now, each entity, including BioLab, is conducting their own internal investigation. So you will not get a lot of information. And as a private citizen, I will remind everyone that because there will be litigation that comes out of this in lawsuits and class action suits in so many other areas, BioLab is going to probably not be releasing more information. And that's why these meetings, ladies and gentlemen, I mean, I get it. They're not the most attractive. They're not the most palatable, but they're the most informative. And I told Paul earlier that the way I see this, it's going to be a marathon, not a sprint. I would love to give everyone an answer and an update on air quality and on where we are with this process. But quite frankly, we're not too far from where we have been. As people return to workspaces and to their schools, I am very concerned. I do not have a child in the Rockdale public school system or the surrounding county. So as a parent, I would be very, very concerned about the health and well-being of my teachers, my children, those custodians, because the air conditioning units more than likely were operating during that time. And as you can imagine, when GEMA and Homeland Security puts out a notice to make sure that you shelter in place and not actively run your air conditioning units, that's not just in our residences, but in our commercial properties as well as in our schools. So number one, please keep track, as Paul said earlier, about any health symptoms you may have, whether it is shortness of breath. As of today, I've gotten probably 35 calls from either personal friends or concerned residents that are experiencing everything from severe respiratory illness to having to strengthen their inhaler because they've had asthma, itchy and burning eyes, migraines that have not gone away. Document every single thing. Every symptom is absolutely critical, because as air reports come out that are being monitored from the Environmental Protection Agency, this information, I can tell you, it was a question asked earlier about real-time updates. I'm trying to find where I put that. Oh, mandatory updates and real-time updates. That will likely not happen. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but during these times, even as a regional administrator, I was briefed just to give you a behind the scenes kind of perspective, I was briefed on this every 12 to 24 hours. So we had 12 to 48, 12 to 24, excuse me, hour briefings that I had directly with the other leadership from these various entities. And I had updates that were as needed. For example, if the fire had not gone out, I would have been told and would have been asked to monitor that more closely. If other challenges happen, as for example, a spike, my air director would then call me with the data. I would share that with the head of the EPD and so on and so forth. So this is an ongoing situation, and it will not be something where you will get on the hour, every hour information. That does not mean we can't hold our elected officials accountable. I do think there needs to be a consistency in messaging. So one thing that I think would happen and would love the councilwoman's support is to continue to convene the elected officials to make sure that there is one message. We don't need 5 different messages from 12 different spokespersons coming out on a daily basis that causes confusion. Our job with these calls is to make sure that we give you education and information, but also to the best of our abilities, bring the right people together that can ensure going forward we can build more capacity as an organization, as a community. Lastly, I'll just say this. I think one of the biggest concerns I have going forth is how we are going to address this. Now, as a group, we are calling for the full closure of BioLab, and I think it's going to be important for us to maintain that stance. But going into this next legislative session, we need to be very, very intentional about preventing this from continuing to impact our communities and our most vulnerable populations. Many of you all have seniors that are in your homes or in your communities, and you have children. And respiratory illness amongst those populations are the most severe. Even if you do not think that your child has maybe had a high level of contamination or exposure, I would advise you to still get checked. I do understand that it's easy for some people to pay their copay. For others, it may not be as easy from an economic standpoint. But to the extent that you can get checked, I would advise everyone to just check their levels. That is something that we are working on collectively to try and release the burden off of some of the communities and people that are impacted. But I think it's going to be very important for you to continue to follow in that process. Last thing I will say, and thank you again to Paul and Brianti and for the organization, is to make sure that you keep up with these calls. I can't stress enough. I can give you 5, 10, 20 examples of what I dealt with in cities like Memphis, Tennessee, Jackson, Mississippi, Lowndes County, Alabama, Smyrna, Georgia, where Sterogenics was. These crises, these challenges, when they happen, too often there are a lot of people at the table, and there will be a level of fatigue. I do know that everyone may not be able to make every single meeting, but I will tell you the key to being able to get answers is to be consistent, to make sure that you're asking questions. So for those, 5 or 7 people that have asked questions already, please continue to ask those questions. If we don't have the answer, we will help you find that answer. We'll continue to bring great people onto these calls, but more importantly, it's going to be absolutely critical for us to do this as a unit, as a collective, to make sure that we ensure the best quality path forward for everyone, especially those who were affected the most. So thank you all for being on this call. That's my time, but if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer those as well, Paul.
Yeah, there's 1 or 2 I want to send to you, and then we do have someone asked for updates from Newton County, and we have a commissioner from Newton on, it looks like. So I'm going to make sure that she gets a chance to respond there as well.
Okay.
And move into stuff. So one question is from Cheryl. There are other chemical degradation byproducts besides chlorine of the chemicals and packaging materials used at BioLab. Why isn't, or is EPA monitoring for those other chemicals? Do you know if they're left off the list?
Yeah, so what happens in these scenarios, again, ladies and gentlemen, we have air directors, water directors, we monitor. This data is taken back. Usually we have a lab, for example, in Athens, Georgia, where the water division will test contamination, for example. They'll come collect samples, same thing with our air monitoring, and they will determine which ones are at high risk. That does not mean that there are not other chemicals, but then also take into consideration that some of the chemicals, if they are not regulated by the EPA, they will not be reported. That is something that I actually learned when I was appointed by President Biden. I was gone through a briefing on how reporting is done with federal agencies. We do not report on, for example, if a chemical is not deemed as hazardous, or if there's a chemical that has not gone through Senate or the House and then has been labeled, or for example, with PFAS, we just made a new rule this year on dangerous PFAS chemicals that are in water. Well, prior to this year, it would have been very hard for an individual to make a request, even if it was through the Freedom of Information Act, on record keeping for that particular contamination. It's the same with this. So when we had the director or the atmospheric science specialist from Georgia Tech on last week, Sally Eng, she did mention that she, in her data, found other chemicals outside of chlorine, which included ammonia. So there are other chemicals. As an investigation comes out, there will be more listed. But one thing that we can do as a collective is we can jointly put together a document, a request to each of our elected officials, including EPD and EPA, to let them know that we would like a comprehensive report. Not saying that will happen immediately, but that is the best way for reporting to happen in real time. Congressman Johnson, I will say he is not here, but Congressman Johnson and I have been on several calls with leadership from around the state, including BioLab, and I will tell you that he is working extremely hard to get every bit of information. And I want to just thank him publicly, because he's not on here to say that for himself, but he is doing work to ask the very, very difficult questions, such as what other chemicals should we be concerned with? As the investigation goes on, we should be able to hear more about what levels are out there and what chemicals we should or should not be concerned about.
Thank you so much for that. And then I want to throw one more out here, which is, when we're thinking about environmental justice and our communities coming together, to demand that, what would you recommend as a neighborhood if a neighborhood wanted to come together, and file stuff to take care of the people that had to go to hotels, right, and take things out like that and expenses like that? What does that path look like? Do we need to be looking for lawyers? Do we need to first bring everybody together? What would you recommend there?
I would recommend you pause, and it starts with calls like this. The first thing that I would do if I was in the community is keep a ledger. I would also make sure that there are going to be a lot of hungry lawyers out there. You don't want to cast your lot just with the first person that says they want to represent you. But we need to be concerned. I think that community organizing is absolutely critical in the responsiveness. We need to get as many. For example, in the city of Atlanta, they have the NPU system, right? I don't know what structures are in place in Rockdale, but we need to be able to coordinate leadership, but we also need to be able to galvanize information in real time. I would say that from we talk a lot about keeping your receipts from your medical visits. Keep your receipts from if you got to go buy the industrial masks to protect yourself. If you need to, for example, there are federal incentives through the Department of Energy where you can weatherize your home and prevent the ongoing influx of bad air quality coming into your home. This may be a good time for you to be able to get that and not only write it off, but submit that receipt to be reimbursed for it. Because many of our homes, if we're honest, are older. And if you have older homes that have cracks in the doors, it doesn't matter if you have a great air conditioning unit that's shut off. If your home is not weatherized, especially many homes that were built in the 90s and before, you will continue to have a problem. So number one, I would have a joint ledger. Maybe you open up a Microsoft document and you utilize that with a spreadsheet, and you share that spreadsheet based on emails, and you document it or color code it by area in your neighborhood or by alphabetically, however you do it, but keep a ledger. That ledger should include, to the extent that people want to share their medical information, receipts. If you had to drive to the doctor's office, that is an expense you had to incur during this time of you wanting to be healthy. Keep your gas receipts. And I'm sharing this with you because too often we think that, well, oh, I got to just run and do this or that. No, keep a ledger of every single thing. And then lastly, make sure you have a consistent means of communication. As we have these calls, there are going to be individuals that have separate groups that want us to speak. Myself, Paul, Briante, other people on this call, we're more than willing to make an adjustment in our personal schedules to help to address and communicate with your groups. Those are a few things I would do. Lastly, I am personally going to be working on creating a master list of the names of individuals that you all should be aware of. You need to know who's on your school board, who's on your city council, who's over at EPD, who's at EPA, who are the names of the individuals so that we're not just taking information as it comes from press release. We need to know who the leadership is, who is the current regional director, who is the EPD person, who's at GEMA. These individuals cannot be behind the curtain, nor can BioLabs not make comment during a press conference. Hold them accountable, know their names, keep a ledger and a record, and that would be my best advice moving forward. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. So we're going to now move into just an action portion of this real fast. And some of this stuff, I'm going to give you a couple quick updates from community and things that have been happening. And then I would like to guide everybody real fast to the website to sign up, so we can figure out, just like what you're interested in, and what your capacity is. And if you need assistance, what we can do there. So the first thing I want to do real fast is walk y'all through a couple updates that we've gotten over the weekend. There was a press conference at the Georgia State Capitol on Saturday, where Congressman Hank Johnson and local leaders, including some of the people on this call, like you thought we will hear from soon, called for the shutdown of BioLab. We also announced some demands, which Briante listed earlier, which are on the website. We'll look at that in a second. The Party for Socialism and Liberation held a rally at the state capitol again on Sunday just to keep this issue up in the news and keep people talking about it. There have been reports, and this is when I share some of this other heavier stuff, this is not for anyone to, this is not to scare anyone. This is just me being real about what we have heard and what people have contacted us and let us know. Talked to a woman named Denise this morning who lives 5 minutes from me off Columbia Drive in South DeKalb, and her bees died. You might have seen that on Twitter. She had a TikTok that went kind of viral, and we've heard from other folks around the area that their bees have been leaving or dying, that some farm animals have been sick. We also, if you have not already followed them, I'm going to drop their Twitter handle here in the Zoom. But Cody Alcorn at 11 Alive is a journalist who has been covering this all weekend, has been very good. He caught them, and this is all on Twitter. You can see the photos, dumping something in a pond behind the VFW building. No answers yet on that, but people are following up on it. And as soon as we hear something, as soon as he hears something, then we'll make sure we let you know. But that was a thing that was happening. I spoke today with a woman named Sherry who's in the hospital. Sherry had an ulcer, and had just been given some new medication for it. And after exposure, got in a lot of pain, had to go back to the hospital. And the hospital says that they had a whole rash of incidents like this, a lot of endoscopies, a lot of things like that. So, general health update: if you or your people have either respiratory, but also specifically digestive things or ulcers, as part of your pre-existing conditions, your medical history, just check on your people, make sure they're not in pain. If they are in pain, better safe than sorry. If you can afford to go to the hospital or to an urgent care or something, please do. And then today there was also another press conference. The chair of Rockdale County has said that it is still a, quote, crisis, that we are dealing with, quote, uncontained chemicals. And that's why the shelter-in-place order has been lifted, except for that 2-mile radius. However, and this is an ask, a request from y'all. Business owners today near that facility then started returning to their business, and sometime later, they were ordered to evacuate. One owner described a man in a gas mask showed up to his business telling him to evacuate, and when pressed, he was told that he said that he worked for BioLab. This is the closure area. The business closures are Black Lawn Road Southeast, Olympic Court, Veterans Court, and Dogwood Drive, so west of the VFW. We have now put up this website. And so the first thing that I want to make sure that we get done here, I'm about to share my screen, if that is okay with everyone, and show you here we go. If my Google Chrome decides it wants to work today. All right, this is our agenda. This is our website. If you go here, it's www.shutdownbiolab.com. Nice and simple. There are two things that I want to bring forward today. First is these are the demands that came out of that press conference. I would like us to quickly look at these. Please, if you can pull it up on your own, on your computer, please do so. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to drop a poll here. And this is just a simple question. Do you agree with the demands presented? You can vote yes or no. And second, if there's anything you'd like to add to your vote. So if you're like, yes on some of these, but no on some of these, then you can add that in the second answer. So these demands are shut down BioLab, 1 time's an accident, 2 times a suspect, 3 times as a pattern. 2 is health screenings, something that we as the people are going to have to do because they're not going to do it for us, is to talk to our neighbors, document symptoms, and then, also see this is a facility that's done this many times, right? So maybe the earlier times didn't get the exposure, or maybe in the middle of 2020, other things were happening. There might be people that still have symptoms or things from previous incidents that we want to make sure that we capture. Third is full compensation for the workers and the residents affected by the chemical fire. So we have a lot of workers here, right? This is a big employer. And this is a tension we got to think about, right? When we're calling for this company to be shut down, there's 400 something jobs. And we need to make sure that, we're thinking about that. Now, that might be worth it. And frankly, 20 years ago, that might have meant a lot more than it does now in Conyers, but that's still a lot of people. But we do think that everyone should be compensated for that. Next is a comprehensive evacuation plan and stipends for anyone that has to leave, because we know that even if there are people that are capable of just driving out of their way or going to stay, with their aunt or whoever, there are people that are house locked, right? There are people that have pre-existing conditions that should be able to leave, but they can't. We think that there should be a state of emergency in the metro Atlanta area. And specifically, that is for those people we just talked about, right? Those are for the people that really, really need it, and so that we can make sure we get the resources that people deserve. Then we want to make sure there's a large-scale cleanup initiative. There's an open question right now. Chlorine is heavier than the air typically, and so it comes down and it rests on things. It sticks to things. So there's a question of, well, what happens when it rains? Does that then go into the water? As of right now, this is an answer. This was a Q&A question. As of right now, the water testing is coming back good. It's coming back fine. That has not settled into any kind of groundwater system that we are aware of right now. Does that change? We don't know. Right now, the odds are probably not, but also we don't know. And this is that's how life is, right? And then finally is, yeah, we think that people need to be held responsible. We think that as far as is appropriate and as far as within the extent of the law, that people should be prosecuted if there was in fact negligence. So asking everybody, please go and vote in this poll, because that is how I'm going to say, okay, we're in agreement, let's keep going. I'll also make sure that those extra answers that you provided, if there's anything you'd like to add to your vote, that those get out as well. The second part, I know I'm talking a lot at you right now, so thank you so much for bearing with me. I'm just trying to make sure we don't take up too much of your time. Over here on the right side of the screen, you'll see a form. I'm asking everyone on this call and everyone that's in this area to fill out this form. You are not going to get spammed from us, but we're going to follow up with you individually. And if you say I'm willing to check on my neighbors, then you're going to get an email from me asking if you have checked on your neighbors, or what day you can check on your neighbors. And if you say Sunday I can walk around the neighborhood and talk to folks, great. I'm gonna hit you up on Sunday night. And that's my job. That's what I do. But those are the kind of things we need. We need local business owners. We need people that it can research, because there was a Q&A question of, what about the long-term impacts of the 2004 incident? We don't know. Only we can do that work. And there are people like Ifat that are trying to get other experts in that can help, that can show us how to make that and quantify that from a public health standpoint. But ultimately, it's going to be on us to go get that information and get that data. And I'm just going to tell you, I organized in Gainesville in 2021 after there was a liquid nitrogen leak at a poultry factory, and they would not have done that work for us. It took community going and getting everybody with symptoms to the hospital for those folks to make it through the hospital. So then also if there are people that need help, if you're a lawyer, great. If you're willing to come to the rally on the 19th, which we'll hear about in a second, please fill that out. Let us know what is going on and what you can do and what your interests are. Now, there are broadly three kind of groups of volunteering, okay? One of them is going to be health and safety. Health and safety means like performing wellness checks. That means we're going to get you links for tracking the air quality. That means reporting your symptoms. That means feeding people if they, or providing a ride to work if someone needs it. That's that kind of stuff. Then there's communications and research. Communication and research is what's the news saying, what's public statements are. If someone's on social media saying that, my horse just keeled over, can you reach out to that person on social media, get their contact information? Let's go talk to them, see if that's A, real, and then B, bring that information forward. If the CEO of KIK is coming to Georgia, can we throw him a welcome party? But we need to know if he's coming first. And I do see people filling out that form on the website, so thank you so much. So those that kind of thing. And then last is the action. So that's meeting with your elected officials. That's recruiting people to attend. That's coming on October 19th. That's a press conference. That's if we establish these are good lawyers. These are people that we can work with. For a class action lawsuit, letting people know about that. Those are kind of the three big, broad things there. So with all of that said, and I know that was a lot, and thank you. I know my voice may not be the most, the most musical you've ever gotten. The next thing I want to do is I want to turn this over to Ifat Walker, because this is someone from this community that has done this work before, that I think can really ground us and lead us and show us the right way to go about this. That can talk about what's going on. We make you a co-host there. There we go. Ifat, if you're ready. Sorry about that.
Okay, let's see. I am ready. Let me pull my notes back up. Okay, let me know if you guys can hear me.
We can.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Thanks, Paul, Briante, and Daniel for your work in moving this forward. For those that I don't know, I see several of my neighbors, great friends from Rockdale County, City of Conyers, on the call. Thank you so much for joining this extremely important call tonight. For those that I don't know, my name is Ifat Walker. I'm the Director of Community Action Now. We've been in the climate and environmental justice work since about 2015. Every incident that we've worked on is considered a different mission. We've coined this mission as Shutdown BioLab, in solidarity with our unified message to do such. Through this particular mission, we're focused on three very specific areas of response. One, in solidarity with everyone on the call that has answered the call to shut down BioLab, our call to action is to be in solidarity and to push other organizations within the community that we work with, that we are planning to work with, and that we encounter, as well as individuals, to stand in solidarity with that single message of shutting down BioLab and all the demands listed under that. So that's number one. Under that, the current Facebook pages that have been directed, that are run by me currently, the What's Going On Conyers and What's Going On Rockdale, which we currently use just to post information about what's going on Rockdale. We're going to push that over to this mission, making sure that the messages that are now in the group that reaches the residents in Rockdale County echoes the same information that's coming out of this group. Number two, community organizing. Grassroots organizing is our work and has been personally my work for the past 20 years. Specifically in response to the call to show up and demand that BioLab shuts down through protest. We are going to be protesting on the 19th in Rockdale County. That information is going to be sent out to everyone. And based upon how the movement of where we are with the response, there may be more. Why do we protest? I think it's important to understand why we protest when it comes to organizing and responses. This particular mission is a little different from some of the other missions that we've been on. The reason that this mission requires and demands that there is a part of civil disobedience is because answers have not been provided. because this looks and feels very much like environmental racism, because there are just too many answers that have not been presented in a reasonable amount of time, and because this company was allowed to continue in a community with multiple violations. We see these types of companies, these types of corporations existing only in certain communities, and I don't have to go too far into that. I think we all know what we're talking about. We protest to influence public opinion and government policy, specifically as it relates to our demands that will be echoed and are echoed on the shutdown BioLab website. Number 3, short-term and long-term medical research and data collection. We have tapped Morehouse School of Medicine as well as PCOM Georgia to assist us in coming up with a strategy, as well as deploying volunteers out into the community to begin documenting medical research and tracking individuals in both short-term and long-term impact. So that work is going to begin in the weeks to come. We're also going to be working on a series of town halls. And Daniel, thank you so much for agreeing to help us with some. I'm throwing you right in there again. But we have to continue this conversation. All of these things combined keep this message and this story on the forefront. What we don't want to happen is what's happened in the past. It becomes a news story and it's hot for like 7 to 14 days. That's usually the burn time of a good story. After that time, people have gone on to life as usual. We don't want that to happen. So we have to keep it hot. Literally meaning we have to be in front of the camera. We have to get people in front of the camera, but we have to do it in a unified message. Much like what Daniel said earlier, the message has to remain the same. That's why in this call, I'm only giving out the shutdown BioLab website, because I believe that everyone that is in solidarity needs to simply sign up and route everyone to that one website that has information about all the organizations. But what it does is it keeps a unified message. What we cannot do and what we must agree to do on this call is that we all agree with the message, that we're all going to stay in solidarity, and we're going to keep that message, and we're going to echo it every time a camera is pushed into our face. Because make no mistake about it, everyone on this call at one point or another, you're more than likely going to get a call from the media. And we have to be in solidarity with the message. That's all I have for you all. As you can see, we've got some work. We've got some things going as it relates to the protest. We're going to make sure that you have that. We have it both in English and in Spanish. That's another reason why we've tapped PCOM Georgia, because we need to be able to communicate effectively to the full community, not just one part of the community. We have a large Spanish-speaking community in Rockdale County that is directly impacted, and in our neighboring community as well. So we want to reach the population with those that understand the population. Any questions? That's all I got for y'all tonight.
We love it. Let me check the Q&A real fast to make sure I'm not missing anything here. Here we go. Here's one, and just because you're following this, I think you can answer this. Is the plant still spewing gas? Is that what's our just current status there?
That's a question that I can't answer, because I have and I don't trust anything that's coming out in the media as it relates to what's going on.
Awesome. My understanding right now, and thank you so much. My understanding right now is that the fire is, the flames are out. There may be still things that are off-putting gas that are, or even smoldering is a word that was used yesterday. So that there is that, but it is not in a huge, large sense on fire or something like that. I do want to answer one other thing that's come up a couple times, which is about running your AC. The short answer to this is that, and I did put this in the chat. So with mass, your N95 alone does not guarantee protection against chlorine. It's not going to be able to handle it. good masks that can handle vapors, they literally say vapor, can handle vapors on the thing, are kind of expensive. It's like $40 for the mask, and then another, you have to get these separate cans. And it's a lot. That said, the current government guidance is to not run your air conditioner during those times. We've talked to a few HVAC professionals, and what they have said, and I checked this with someone that works in forensics with the State Department today, that beekeeper whose bees died. And what they have told us and what she told me was that if your air conditioner pulls air from the outside and you don't have a HEPA filter, then do not run your air conditioner. If your air conditioner does, if your air conditioner pulls from inside, it's an internal kind of thing, or it's in the basement, you can shut the basement door, then you're fine to run that if you have that filter on there. You should not run a window unit. You should definitely not run it when you can smell chlorine in the air. Also, just keep in mind, though, if your house is built in the 1950s and you've got single pane glass and, the windows and shut all the way, then, that's not really going to do too much there regardless. I see that, Ifat, thank you so much. The other one here that I want to make sure we hit is we have a couple people that have asked why isn't Newton County been a part of this conversation? So I am going to check right now and see if our Commissioner Alana is still with us. And Alana, you should be able, sorry, Commissioner, you should be able to speak now.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you so much. And that hat on your profile picture is incredible.
Yeah, thank you so much. That is definitely a good question. We've been asking, why has Newton County been part of the conversation? What we have been hearing, although it happened in Rockdale County, we've been hearing DeKalb, Gwinnett. But my district, which is District 3, is on the borderline of Rockdale County. I have constituents that have Conyers addresses, and I have subdivisions that are half Newton County and half Rockdale County. So we're getting left out of the equation. The other thing is, a lot of constituents are confused when they receive the notice, because the notice that comes on their phone says Rockdale. So I had to physically go online or tell some constituents that that pertains to you because you live in the vicinity. So there's not a message that's going out collectively that's been provided to all of the constituency in various counties. So they are confused and frustrated. So I have also spoken with my colleagues on the board as well as our chair to make sure messages go out. If they're not coming from EPA or they're not providing us with the full information. So Newton County has been left out of the equation when it comes to various things, because you're constantly hearing DeKalb, Rockdale, and Gwinnett. But the constituents that live in Newton are the ones that are closer to the area and on the borderline. And that's my district, which is District 3.
If you if you need to be connected to the commissioner, please reach out. Commissioner, could you drop your email in the chat, or tell me right now, and I will go ahead and drop it in the chat for everybody.
Yes, I'm gonna give you, I guess the county, A Sanders at co.newton.ga.us, and my county cell phone number. Let me know when you're ready. I know you're typing.
No, you're good for it. Go for it.
706-819-0357.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. And Michelle Dawkins, you bring up a really good point. Yeah, not everyone can wear a respirator, and that's why we are going to have to get in community and collect this data, because we know, just like with COVID, that even if you can, people can be doing a ton of effort and a ton of work, and it's still not going to hit everybody because there's just people in different situations. That's life. And we're going to see if we can respond to that ourselves. There is still a change.org petition going around to shut down BioLab. We encourage everyone to sign that. And I will, that is on the website, and I will make sure that it's in the email that comes around again. And then the other thing I want to make sure that we all hit here again is just that there's a lot of research that needs to be done. And unfortunately, due to a history of racism, due to a pro-business environment for as long as the state has existed, those are things that unfortunately I think we're going to have to really get going ourselves. But we appreciate you being here. I know that it's late. It is 7:40. Please, please, please go to the website. That's www.shutdownbiolab.com. Sign that form. We will follow up. We will get you plugged in according to your interests. And I will be working to connect on with people that can answer the questions that we were not able to answer today. And again, I just don't want to give you wrong answers on things that I haven't gotten from someone, that is reputable. So if I haven't answered it yet, we are absolutely going to. But it just, we want to make sure we give you credible information as well. And then last but not least, I want to make sure I have one more ask. Sorry, there's two. I'm going to drop in the chat again. There is a state legislative hearing on this tomorrow from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. I am dropping the sign up for that. You can do it via Zoom in the chat. If you have been impacted, please, we have to keep this a story. To Ifat's point, we have to keep this a story, and that means we have to give everybody as much ammunition as we can. Please sign up for that, provide testimony, especially if you've been impacted directly. And then finally, and this is, I promise, my last ask. That is, people need to see a human face to this. People respond better to people. People care about humans. They don't necessarily care about Paul Glaze on Twitter, moving my thumbs as fast as I can. And so my ask is, if you have a cell phone, take out that cell phone, record a video, just you to the camera, calling for this facility to be shut down, or talking about the impact of this incident on you and your family's life, or your neighbor's life, your community's life, and post that. We really, really need to make sure people know that there's a lot of people here that have been neglected for a long time, and that they're not taking this anymore. And I just want you to know, because I have the results of our poll here, that 100% of people agreed with the demands. There was not a single person that put no. There are people that want to add to that, including cover expenses for gas masks, continuous water air monitoring, tax relief at the state level to freeze property taxes around there if they're repeat environmental offenders, creating a fund for unforeseen expenses for the future, getting ahead of this, consistent air quality checks in schools. So, trust that the people are with you, and as always, are further ahead than the powers that be will ever be. People are with you on this. We're so glad you're here. Again, marathon, not a sprint. I'm going to throw this back to Briante if there's anything she would like to say to close us out of here. And again, we will follow up with the recording. This will not be the last you hear from it.
I just want to say, thanks everyone for the meeting. Very inspiring. I appreciate all the information being shared in the Q&A, all the resources, all the upcoming events, all the meetings. This is exactly what community organizing looks like. So thank you all for being here with us tonight, and hopefully we'll see you again soon.
I wish I had cool play out music, but I don't. I will follow up though. And I will send you a playlist recommendation at the same time. Thanks, everybody. And I will also try and share info from the chat.